You still haven't told me what it is you do.
Oh, I got investments. I take people's money and put it to work. You got me?
Alec Baldwin plays a whacked-out criminal who leads a violent domestic life with Jennifer Jason Leigh in the thriller Miami Blues. That's one of 4 new films we'll be reviewing this week on Siskel and Ebert. We'll also pay tribute to the legendary Greta Garbo. I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune.
And I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times. Our first movie is named Miami Blues, and it's a dark comedy starring Alec Baldwin, who is an American intelligence agent in the Hunt for Red October, but this time plays a completely different kind of role as a pathological criminal whose best developed trait is incompetence. In the movie, he's just been released from prison and lands in Miami, where he meets a naive junior college student who's working as a hooker. They hit it off right away.
How about that poem we were going to write?
We make love a lot.
We make love right now.
That's Jennifer Jason Leigh as the hooker, and her character is not very bright in this film. After a cult member is found dead at the airport, a police investigation leads to Baldwin, who invites the cop, played by Fred Ward, to stay for dinner.
Where'd you do your time?
Time? What do you mean?
Oh, the way you're guarding that food. Not like another con could take it away from you.
Ward begins to suspect Baldwin.
Maybe you could, shoot by and take a look at the lineup. Take you 5 minutes. Oh, yeah. You mind standing in the lineup, too? We're a little short of bodies.
And Ward ends up in the hospital after Baldwin steals his gun, his badge, and his false teeth.
He's a big guy, man. Bigger than you. Got up from the table, said he was homicide.
Hold a badge?
After he waxed the dude. It was cold, man. Ice cold.
Meanwhile, Baldwin starts playing cops and robbers all over Miami.
Hey, what are you doing?
Open the damn door now! Do it! Stop or I'll shoot! You just shot me!
Fired a warning shot and it hit you.
Miami Blues wants to be an offbeat, colorful comedy and also a dark meditation on violence, both at the same time. That leaves it sitting on the fence. It's not very funny, and it's not very scary either. One of the irritations in the movie is the way all 3 of the main actors, Baldwin, Ward, and Leigh, play cliched, dumb Southerners so that we get impatient while they figure things out and talk like this. I think the Baldwin character is supposed to be a frightening sociopath, but after seeing Michael Rooker play the mass murderer in the current film Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, Baldwin looks too shallow and his dialogue sounds too written to really be convincing.
But I thought his behavior was convincing. I think there are a lot of freaky people, weird people. I think he's supposed to come from California, from the West Coast, not from the South.
Oh, well, that would explain it, yeah.
No, but I'm talking about an accent. But I think that there are people that are just get a kick out of being destructive, which is apparently all that's in this kid's mind. Mm-hmm. And he is frightening maybe for that reason. Also, he's able to inveigle this young woman whose whole life seems to come out of watching television. She just thinks that she's interested in having products and a domestic life. And I got involved in the film for all of its faults. Some of the scenes that Baldwin plays are dead copies of De Niro's behavior, some of them out of Taxi Driver, just a speech pattern. At the same time, I just watched them. I thought it was, if it can be said so, with such a sociopathic character, it was entertaining.
Yeah, but you know, Gene, the problem is, it's all in the middle. You see, this movie doesn't really go all the way. I mean, if you talk about his relationship with Jennifer Jason Leigh, what about Henry's relationship in the movie Henry with the sister of his
They're
roommate.
completely different films.
Are they completely different
Yeah,
films?
I
This
think
one
so.
wants to have it both ways. That's why it's completely different. It wants to be Henry, and it doesn't want to be Henry. That's what the problem is with this movie. It wants to go only so far. They didn't have the courage to push it in the direction that it wanted to go in.
I think this guy is very violent. I know what you're saying is that it's a more conventionally entertaining film.
It's
if you're
more
saying
palatable. It's more middle of the road. It's more compromised.
Well, I think that the other character we haven't talked about is Fred Ward. I think he's one of our very best actors.
Yes, he
He's
is.
absolutely colorful and is entertaining. I mean, this I think it's based on a book about the Fred Ward character, a series of books based on this policeman. And he's a fascinating guy. I think it's more of a light entertainment. I think it works on that level.
Okay.
Our next film is called Vital Signs, and it's a dim-witted medical school drama about young would-be doctors in love with medicine and with each other. This is really cornball TV material. Nothing about this film is worthy of being called a movie. Typical of the level of the dialogue is this snappy interchange between third-year med school students Adrian Pazdar and Diane Lane wearing too much makeup.
Seeing how we didn't do too much of our first 2 years, I thought now that we're in the same group, we could make up for lost time.
Michael, you've convinced me. You're very charming.
Thank you.
But I'm afraid you've got it.
Got what?
Surgeon's ego.
A momentary setback occurs in Diane Lane's professional life when a young patient she is treating dies from an allergic reaction to a shot she's prescribed.
Don't beat yourself up for it.
I don't know if I can go back in there. I don't know if I'm strong enough to go back in there.
You are. I know you are.
I don't know if I can go back in there. Give me a break. The biggest drama of the film is a competition between two young men for the one surgery internship.
There's no way you can test for that. It's not your fault.
Should have thought of an angiogram.
Next time.
What do you mean, next time? You got it wrapped up, Chatham.
Even a good actress like Laura San Giacomo from Sex, Lies, and Videotape can't conquer this laughable script as she tells her med school student husband she's tired of playing second fiddle to his studies.
I got off early. I thought I'd bring something. We could have dinner together. Is that okay?
I don't have time to take a break.
All I want is 10 minutes with my husband that I never see.
She looks really bad in this film, and that's just one of the indications of how terrible this script is. I certainly didn't learn anything about the medical profession from Vital Signs. This whole story is on the level of a TV soap opera without those shows' campiness or topicality. There is none of the hard edge of real life in this picture, which is, of course, what real doctors deal with every day.
You know, and you never know where to put the blame when a picture doesn't work, but in this case, I think I would start by putting the blame with the casting director, because the key mistake here was to cast this movie throughout with men who are too handsome and women who are too beautiful so that they look like they're from a daytime soap opera.
Right.
They do not look like medical students.
Not at all.
The most convincing character in the movie was Jimmy Smits from L.A. Law, who plays the senior doctor, the hard-bitten guy. He looks like he might be a real person, and he sounds like he might be a real person, and everybody else is just there in their common room dealing with their episodic problems involving marriage and love life and medicine and fatigue and inter-office intrigue and so forth in a completely predictable way.
But you say it's the casting. I say even if you had fine actors in this film, Laura San Giacomo is a good actress.
Okay.
The script is ridiculous.
Oh, that's
it
true.
is a completely formula thing. It doesn't have to, it could be law school, it could be med school, it could be engineering school.
No, they plug in the basic situations. There was a movie called Gross Anatomy about medical school that I thought was a lot more realistic than this.
And we didn't like that one that much.
Well, even so. When we come back, Lisa, the story of a teenage girl who gets in big trouble when she plays tricks on the telephone.
Richard thinks I'm my mom. You're dead.
It's a teenage slasher movie that at least does have the wit to provide a real plot and real dialogue instead of simply assigning some guy to run around with a knife and a hockey mask. But that's about all I can say for Lisa, a depressing and nihilistic exercise that wants to cash in on the market for movies about dead teenagers, mad slashers, and women in danger. The film stars Stacy Keenan as a teenage girl who likes to get crushes on strange men, snap their pictures, and call them at home. She makes a big mistake one day when she calls a guy who we know, but she doesn't know, is a murderer of women. That's Cheryl Ladd as Lisa's mother, Catherine. Lisa is thrilled the guy talks to her even after he finds out she's not who she pretends to be.
I know you don't think my name is Lisa, but it is.
No, it's not. It's Catherine.
No, You're wrong. I'm not Catherine. My name is Lisa. Why are you calling me that?
Stop lying to me.
I'm telling the truth.
No, you're not.
And what do you think eventually happens? Do I have to tell you? Scenes like this are what movies like Lisa are all about.
Mom?
I'm going to coin a phrase in describing this movie. Now, you all know about fast food. This is a fast movie. And what is a fast movie? A fast movie is a movie that is made to open quickly, make some money, and be forgotten. A week later, you're hungry for another movie. There is nothing in this movie to challenge the imagination of anyone who sees it, or make them more curious about human nature, or surprise them, or delight them, or entertain them, or even scare them. It simply delivers a bare minimum of shocks and thrills, and would-be violence and alleged terror. And it's like when fast food came along, it made some people forget what real food tasted like. And fast movies, I'm afraid, are making people forget real movies. With the fast food, you don't have to chew real hard, and with fast movies, you don't have to think, not hardly at all.
I had a similar kind of reaction, which was, I was wondering who this picture was made for.
Yeah.
In other words, what was the idea behind it? Certainly, the Mad Slasher movie, its time is a decade old at best, when we had a few of them, and they did make some money. I don't even think this picture will make any money in this, and I only say that, and I rarely talk about that, but here I don't understand what was the marketing, what's the idea here? Unless there's seems to be a sort of a pervasive thing in Hollywood where a bunch of men make a whole bunch of pictures about young girls in dangerous situations, that they somehow think that that's interesting, or maybe that's what they're interested in. I don't know.
Well, of course, a good movie on any subject, including that subject, would be interesting.
Yes.
This is not a good movie, and it doesn't even try to be a good movie. And so the discouraging thing is, it will open up, it will occupy some screens.
Right.
What gets me these days is that so much that we see on the screen is dead, and the audience sits there and they don't get anything out of it. And eventually, I think they'll be dead too, because the whole point of going to a movie is, it seems to me, to enhance your experience, instead of, if the 2 hours you spend in front of the screen are not as interesting as 2 hours you could spend outside the theater, why spend your money?
You could enjoy yourself more. I'm not trying to be cute here, but you could enjoy yourself more just in the lobby of the theater than overpaying for refreshments.
Heck, yeah, some of these video games they have are really terrific.
It's a dull film. Coming up next, a drama about mental hospital reform called Chattahoochee, starring Gary Oldman and Dennis Hopper.
The point is...
Yes.
I ain't crazy.
Florida town that is home to a decrepit mental hospital badly in need of reform in the 1950s. This movie is the story of the brave young man who eventually triggers that reform. Gary Oldman, the fine young British actor, plays a distraught Korean war hero who begins shooting up his neighborhood out of frustration with his family life.
We better get him.
Well, why don't he duck?
Oldman is sent to the state mental hospital at Chattahoochee, a true hellhole where he witnesses all sorts of crimes against patients that he documents in the margins of a Bible that he hands to his visiting sister.
The beatings are in Genesis. Extreme and unusual punishments are in Ecclesiastes, and unexplained deaths are in Deuteronomy.
Shall we start with Genesis?
Pamela Reed plays the sister, and she becomes concerned about her brother's well-being when she hasn't heard from him for many weeks. She confronts the hospital's chief doctor, Ned Beatty.
Now, I don't know where you stuck him, but he better be in reasonable shape when we find him.
In an effort to free himself, Oldman studies some law books and announces to his best friend in the hospital, inmate Dennis Hopper, that he may have found a literal escape clause.
What is it? Habeas corpus, Walker. Habeas corpus.
Aside from Oldman, the best performance in the film is turned in by Frances McDormand from Mississippi Burning, playing Oldman's wife, who can't understand his pain.
Don't you love me? Do you remember ever loving me?
Many of my favorite actors are in Chattahoochee, and yet all of their good work can't energize what is a well-meaning but much too predictable story of reform. We even get a scene where Oldman has received electroshock treatments, and he is carried Christ-like, arms outstretched, through the hospital courtyard. He survives, he exposes the bad guys, a reform-minded governor takes charge. Chattahoochee has fine individual moments, but you can't help but feel that you've seen this movie and this story, well-meaning as it is, before.
I felt the same way. The performances The moments of the performances, there's nothing wrong with them.
Fine.
But the script, it seems to me, is, well, I'm almost repeating what you said. The script is basically your basic mental hospital reform movie. The guy goes in, at first he's completely alienated, then he decides to work, he becomes a jailhouse lawyer, he writes notes, he smuggles them out, some brave people on the outside get involved, and the bad guys who run the hospital get their comeuppance. This movie has been made over and over again, but there was a curious thing about it. I saw it a year and a half ago at the Toronto Film Festival, and I really disliked it. Now they said, well, we've made some editing changes, so go back and see it again. Well, I hadn't seen it in a long time, so I wanted to. You know, for once, the editing changes did improve it. It's a better movie than it was a year and a half ago.
Was it shortened? I mean, just...
You see, the problem is it's been so long, and movies flow together in such a way you can't get the specifics so much as that the impression is that they tightened it up and made it work better, but it still is just standard issue.
It sits there. I mean, Sissy Spacek was Marie, was her prison reform film. This is the same story. And Marie, well acted as though it wasn't very compelling, and this picture isn't either. You just sit there and it's like you're on a treadmill that you've been running on before.
You gotta break the mold. Like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, that broke the mold. When we come back, a tribute to the woman many people thought was the greatest star of all, Greta Garbo.
I face the truth.
What truth?
That one day I shall find myself alone.
Greta Garbo died last weekend at a New York hospital, and in death as in life, she remained a mysterious figure. A hospital spokesman announced her passing, but he gave no time, no cause of death, and no other statement. And then Garbo was alone at last. She was the most famous and mysterious of the MGM stars of the 1930s, and her legend only grew after she retired in 1941 and tried to withdraw completely from public view. Her first major film was made in Sweden in 1924 for Maurice Stiller, who discovered her and said such a face as hers came along only once in a century. Brought to Hollywood by Louis B. Mayer, she made 10 silent films, including Flesh and the Devil with John Gilbert, a fading star that she was linked with romantically. Garbo talks, the ads for Anna Christie shouted in 1930, and 3 years after the birth of the talkie, she was at last heard on the screen.
Give me a whiskey. Ginger ale on the side. And don't be stingy, baby.
And in Grand Hotel, she delivered the word she became famous for.
I want to be alone.
Garbo's best movie? It's hard to say. Maybe it was Camille with her famous dying scene opposite Robert Taylor.
Marine, get the doctor quickly.
Doctor, if you can't make me live, how can he?
Garbo always claimed, of course, that she didn't really want to be alone. She just wanted to be let alone. And the fact that she disappeared so completely from view only helped to increase her mystique. She came out of nowhere, or so it seemed, and she became Hollywood's greatest star, and then she disappeared. She had a unique and mysterious screen presence, and her best movies are as entertaining today as when they were made. But Greta Garbo's greatest work of art was her image, not only when we could see it, but especially when we could not.
Well, I'd like to talk about what made her special and distinctive, and I think one of it has to do with her style of acting. She came at the end of the silent era when a lot of actors were very fussy and declaimed out of the old stage tradition, very broad sweep. John Barrymore said of her in Grand Hotel that Greta is simple, and I think it was a very simple style where she didn't do much seemingly in front of the camera, that had the audience come up to her and just stare at her. The other thing is she had a style of often looking up in some way, so that she was ethereal in some way. She was communicating with something other than the mortals that were playing opposite with her. And again, photographed in black and white preserved that image. I think we gotta stress that she stays unique because she was otherworldly to this immigrant crowd that was watching her, this Nordic beauty who was wholly different from them, and from the immigrant crowd that financed her films as well.
You know, there's another interesting thing about her. She did not have the world's greatest figure for a movie actress, and they knew that at the time. And so invariably in a Greta Garbo picture, she was photographed either in close-up or in long shot. She was never photographed in medium shots and rarely photographed in close two shots with another person. So that because of that, people began to see her as separated. She always seemed to have the screen to herself, even in movies where she was starring with other people. And that subliminally, I think, added to her appeal. Also, one of her directors said that she was the only actress he'd ever seen who could suggest something through her eyes. You could suggest thought through her eyes.
Well, that was the different style of acting, where other people would want to state it in some way. The film that you didn't mention, which I would suggest people rent at home video, is her one comedy, Ninotchka, where she is fabulously funny and indicates, now this is 1939, so she's 34 years old, indicates, I think, in that film, that if she had stayed with the movies, or if the movies had stayed with her, she could have had a really long and exciting career. Now let's recap the movies we reviewed on this show. A split vote on the thriller Miami Blues with Alec Baldwin and the great Fred Ward. I enjoyed the energy of the piece and the acting. Roger thought, however, that the film hedged its bets. My thumb up is down. 2 thumbs down, though, for The Empty-Headed Vital Signs, a medical soap opera masquerading as a movie. 2 more thumbs down for the pointless young woman in danger thriller, Lisa. It's a movie at least 10 years old in concept and utterly without thrills. 2 more thumbs down for the mental hospital reform picture, Chattahoochee. It's well acted, but the story is all too familiar. So the film, of the new films that we're talking about, the one that I recommend is Miami Blues.
I think of the group, I voted down on all of them. I think maybe Chattahoochee is the one that I would go to again if I had to. But I don't guess I sound too enthusiastic.
No.
Anyway, that's it for this week. Next week we'll be back with Q&A, a hard-boiled New York police story starring Nick Nolte and Timothy Hutton. And The Guardian, this is a new horror film by William Friedkin, the man who made The Exorcist. That's next week, and until then, the balcony is closed.
Super 8 motels with over 700 locations nationwide, and the American Express card welcomed at all of them. Don't leave home without it. Nestle Crunch. It's creamy milk chocolate and crispy crunchies. Chocolate is scrumptious when it crunches. That's why you'll love Nestle Crunch. Ruffy's Color Sense waste bags with decor-coordinated pastel colors and fresh fragrances. The decorator bag for kitchen, bath, and bedroom. Genesis Carpet, certified by Amico. Proven more stain and fade resistant than leading nylon carpets.